Do you ever wonder why you're doing what you do in life? Do you wish that you could be really happy and passionate about what you do? Or maybe you already are and you want to expand in a different direction. Hi, I'm Barbara Anne, host of What the Why? I love what I do. A lot of that has to do with my story, my journey to this point in life. And guess what? Everybody has a story. So please join me for conversations with leaders from all walks of life about what they do, and more importantly, why they do it, how they found their core purpose, their passion, their mission in life. And if you're looking for your own, maybe you'll get some great suggestions on how you too can find your why. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of What the Why. If you haven't seen us before, our show features conversations with diverse leaders from all walks of life about why they do what they do and how they figured out that this is their purpose. Maybe you're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, or you feel stuck and you want to get unstuck, whether that's in your job, your career, your own company, or maybe just in your life in general. All of our guests have something in common with you. They felt similarly at some point and they decided to do something about it. And today is no exception. Please join me in welcoming David Jarvis. So, I'm really excited about this for a lot of different reasons. So, just to kind of give you an idea, he's a multi-award winner, keynote, and motivational speaker. But anybody who knows me knows that I'm a big fan of the Olympics and sports, and that's a big part of my life. And he's an Invictus Games Gold Medalist. So I know there's increasing number of people here in the US that know what that is. A British Army veteran, a para athlete, and community champion. So definitely someone who's talking my language. But he's my first ever gold medalist, so I'm super excited about that. Once known as the unluckiest man in NATO, he's now the walking definition of resilience, with an aspiration to motivate and inspire people to adapt to life's challenges through tasks and coaching about overcoming adversity, mental health, and developing personal resilience using personal stories and lived experiences. And coincidentally, today, 6 years ago, my life changed with what would turn into a long COVID diagnosis. And so I can't think of anyone better to have today than someone who's overcome seemingly insurmountable odds to inspire others to do the same. So without further ado, please join with me in welcoming all the way from Scotland, David Jarvis. So yay, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. It's
So,
still embarrassing hearing all that. I'm not going to lie.
and you know what? It is hard to listen when we hear about the different things people talk about what we've done. And so, with that in mind, for those of you who watch and listen to this podcast, whatever platform you're accessing it from, you know, our guests, for the most part, didn't actually think they would be doing what they're doing now. So, and I imagine that includes you as well. So, David, what did little David want to be when he was growing up?
Well, it was definitely none of that, let me tell you. No aspiration to be a champion at anything. I'd no connection to the military, my family, other than maybe national service and, being distant relatives. I had my first job straight out of school was believe it or not, was a chemical engineering apprenticeship with BP. Here in Northeast Scotland, you've got three main trades you can get into. One's farming, one is fishing on the coast, and then the other is the oil industry, because we've got a heavy use of oil rigs and such like in the North Sea, which is what's off the coast of near to where I live. And so they're the kind of three main brackets most people fall into, and I was no different. So I started that apprenticeship, realized relatively quickly it wasn't for me though, but I wasn't silly enough to just leave because it's a well-paid job, even for an apprenticeship. So I thought, well, I'll get a side hustle, something to keep me occupied with, and that's where the army came in. So I joined the Territorial Army, the Reserve Army, as it's now called, and yeah, just realized within the first few months I was enjoying that more. So I started doing more and more of the training, and then I realized, no, this is what I want to do. So I used the last of my holidays from my apprenticeship to sign the dotted line, or sign my life away, as they say when we were getting in. And yeah, I went to join the regular army, the Royal Corps Signals. and that was that. So yeah, neither one of which was on my hit list. So
Yeah,
not the
which
apprenticeship nor the army.
which is both of which are interesting, and of course, that in of itself was a life-changing experience. Shout out to BP. I do actually coach somebody at BP on a contract. So, um, and it was interesting to hear you say something similar. You know, everybody here either does this, this, or this.
Mm.
And so you validated that. So that said, how did you get from signing up for something that really most of your family, this was not like a family legacy where everybody was expected to serve. How did you get from that point to where you are now?
Well, a series of events, I suppose you could say that most of which I think were completely out of my control. All of them were completely out of my control, really.
Mm.
So I got a series of injuries over time. Some of them quite common for squaddies, knees and back. You know, it's quite normal for squaddies to get problems with the knees, problems with the back, all the loaded marching. You know, all the tabbing we call it. You know, and other a few accidents along the way. So when my knees went bad, that was about halfway into my career. The doctors told me I had to start managing my impact training, or I was going to be in a Zimmer frame before I got out. And a typical army career in the UK is 22 years. And so from the day, if you join at 18, you would typically be expected to stay until you're 40. You know, you can extend, don't get me wrong, or you can get out earlier, but that's a normal full career is 22 years. So that was my target. But being told, you know, for someone who is also a physical training instructor as well as a second role on the side of being an engineer, being told you can't, you've got to be mindful of your running and your tabbing, all the things that you consider to be bread and butter for being being a squaddy. That took about a few months to get used to the idea, and that's what led to me getting into cycling. It started out as me just trying to go to and from work, a mile each way. And then and I was one of those people that tucked my bottom of my trousers into my socks so I didn't get them caught on the chain. I was one of them. And then it grew from 1 mile each way to 1 and 5, and then 5 and 5, and then 5 and 10. And it just grew and grew and grew. And I think I then started doing big distances and actually doing some level of training and doing it for socially and for training rather than actually just commuting. And then I entered my first race. So when was that? That was 2015. I started doing that. 2016, I did my first race, and I was absolutely rubbish. Don't get me wrong, I was absolutely rubbish, but I got the bug. So I hit the gym more. I got on the bike more. I trained with people who were far better than me, and yeah, I entered the same race the following year, and I went back and I won it. And then that was kind of the start of cycling. And the kind of racing I was doing was, you imagine the Tour de France, you imagine the last sort of 20, 30 kilometers of the race. It was kind of like that. It's called criterium racing, crit racing. Very, very fast, very tactical, very intense. You know, so it's a real short, like the destruction of your muscles and your heart, because you're absolutely blowing out your ring piece by the time you get to the end. It's an absolute lick out of a workout. It's really good. But I used to like the tactics involved, you know, trying to streamline and all that kind of stuff behind the riders and nipping in the gaps and taking those little risks. Unfortunately, there is a downside to it in that if you go jogging or running, you trip, you might sprain your ankle or get a scuffed knee or, you know, something like that. You come off a bike at 20 or 30 miles an hour. Sometimes on one of the crashes I had, I was actually doing 43 miles an hour, which is, well, I don't know, what's that, 65 kilometers an hour, something like that. I was actually knocked off on that particular one. Yeah, that just did me in other ways as well. So I had my knees, my back, and then end up doing in both my shoulders, my wrist, another bit of my back, and the things just added up over time, and amongst other things as well. And yeah, that led to medical discharge, unfortunately, which I didn't plan or expect. So it's one of those situations where you kind of, you know, it's possible, but you don't really think it's going to happen to you, you know, because I was 1 year to go to the end of my career, or so 21 years in, and yeah, that's all she wrote, as they say. So I had no real plan. So as I was getting out, that whole change, the lifestyle, the finding a new job, figuring out what I was going to do for a job as well was hard enough. I was looking at anything and everything because obviously I've got a family, you know, need to provide for them. So it was a case of I just need to get money coming in. So I didn't know what to go for. So because I had no plan. I wasn't that familiar enough with how to translate my military experience, military qualifications to civvy world, if that makes sense. So, but luckily I met someone else, another ex Scalyback. There's a nickname for the Royal Corps Signal Soldiers, Scalybacks.
I was wondering because you were using some terms that we're not familiar with here, and so I was like, wait, squatty. I'm thinking that's a nickname for squad, but like so
Soldier.
soldier. Okay,
Soldier,
that's what
yeah,
they
that's what
call
we
us.
call
Okay.
soldiers in the UK, squaddies. Yeah, Scalyback, it dates back to the World Wars. The communicators were infamous for carrying the most weight on the battlefield. Radios, the old radios in particular, their batteries leaked acid, or they'd get blistering on their back, scarring, looked like scales, Scalyback. And that was the nickname for a Royal Signal soldier. So it still is today. And I just adopted the name Scalyback Cyclist, and that's my social media handle. So, and that's what SBC is on the back of my business name as well. Speaking SBC. So I'm the Speaking Scalyback Cyclist. So there you go. But
It's
it's,
all coming together now.
there you go.
Okay.
So yeah. But yeah. Bottom line is with the medical discharge, I really struggled with it. The whole that whole change of lifestyle, moving 3 times in as many months as well, being full time at home because I was used to be working away from home most of the time. We had our second daughter in amongst all that as well. And yeah, luckily I met another Scalyback veteran as well, who basically helped me into project management. And showed me how my job translated to that. So, and that's what I got into. So I was quite lucky in that respect. But it was still quite a challenge, to put a nutshell on it. And I took a real hit in my mental health. And that led me to some veterans charities to get some help and support. And then that led me to the Invictus Games and the Royal British Legion, which is the charity that looks after the Team UK. And yeah, I got selected for the team in the January of 23. And the whole point of it for me was to work on my recovery journey. You know, look out, get some help with all my injuries, get some help with mental health, get my confidence back, or my motivation back. I gained a bit of weight. You know, drank a bit too much over that first year after I got out, and I just wanted to kind of get back in that mindset again. You know, of wanting to be part of this thing. You know, so and I had no aspiration to do particularly well, so I signed up to everything I could, and you could do 4 different sports as long as it didn't coincide on the games. So I signed up for swimming, powerlifting, cycling, and indoor rowing. So quite a mix. And yeah, I just threw myself at it. Attended all the training camps I could. Yeah, and unfortunately though, it all changed quite quickly. So that was what, January I got the selected, January 2023. Everything's going fine up until, let's say, about roughly end of April, beginning of May. Now, I was checking my weight periodically because I wanted to lose weight, you know, and be more competitive and, you know, try and look sporty, you know, and not like a fat waste of space, you know what I mean? As I used to call it. What was it? 1st of May, I was 86.5 kilos, and I'd started getting more tired, if that makes sense. I'd been waking up in the night to go to the toilet, which was unusual. I was thirsty more, so I was drinking more water, which was then explaining why I had to get up in the night to go to the toilet, which was explaining why I was tired all the time. So there was logical explanations for it. So I didn't really think about it too much. And then I'm doing 2-a-day training sessions, and I'm still competing in local events just to gain some experience in that. And by the end of the first week, my weight was coming down, but it was coming down quite quick. So there was amber flags going up, but nothing that was triggering the red flag yet. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So by the end of the second week, though, so on the 14th of May, I was at a point where I was getting worried. I could not figure out why I was losing so much weight so quickly, despite the fact I was eating 4,000 calories a day. I was still functioning, still working, you know, still trying to train where possible, but I was having to stop half the time because I was always tired. So I called the doctor on the 15th, and that was a Sunday, Monday. So, and I called my local surgeon. We have doctors in the village, you see. They sent me for a bunch of tests. In hindsight, I only really talked about my weight loss. I hadn't really told them about being tired or thirsty or getting the burning sensation in the back of my throat. And I just basically told him, I'm eating 4,000 calories a day. Yes, I'm training, but I'm not doing anything I haven't done before. I'm eating relatively well. I know how to eat. I'm a trained physical instructor. I know all about nutrition, sport, and how to do fitness properly. So, and this is nothing unusual for me. You know, I've done it plenty of times over the years. So they sent me for tests, called me back in a couple of days later, and they said, yeah, we're pretty confident you're actually type 1 diabetic, and with the problem you're having is something called diabetic ketoacidosis. And this was the 19th of May when I got this diagnosis. This was the Friday. And they actually made it very clear to me how serious it was, because they said that had it been another couple of days, I wouldn't have been walking in anyway. I might have been carried in a box, in a nutshell. And they said that my numbers were some of the highest they'd ever seen in terms of the blood sugar content. The sugar that was in my blood. It was crazy high, way off their scales. Was what they showed me.
Wow.
But they wanted me, they gave me the obvious advice. Be sensible. You need to think about your health and your recovery. You've got a family to think about and so on. You might want to consider dropping out of Team UK this time and focusing on getting better. And I can't fault them. It's a sensible thing to do. My team manager, so that was doctors, the team manager suggested the same thing. But I convinced them to let me have the weekend to think about it. So, and it was a bit of a daze the rest of the afternoon. I can't say as I remember anything specific about the rest of the afternoon. It was all a bit of a blur. I spent most of the morning in the hospital. I got there about 9 o'clock, 9:30, and I was there, I think, till just before 1 o'clock, something like that. And I walked out with 2 great big shopping bags full of stuff, all my medical supplies and pamphlets and, all name a bump. And the following morning, because I'd now started taking insulin, I'd gone in feeling knackered all the time, feeling really tired. I'd walked out having to take 5 injections every day and having to jab a needle in my finger every 4 times a day to do blood tests. So 9 needles a day, just like that. So it was quite surreal. Wow. But the next morning, I got up almost my normal time. So I'm up early every morning, roughly about 4:30, 5-ish, something like that. Probably nearer to 5:30 now, if I'm honest. But I actually felt great, even though I was still really not in a good place. I'd lost 26% of my body weight. So on that morning, I was just over 70 kilos. Bear in mind, at the beginning of May, I was 86.5. So all of that in the better part of 2 weeks, or a little over 2 weeks. So I looked a haggard mess, but I felt so much better than I had the day before, because I started taking insulin. I'd had a good night's sleep. So I get up and do go through my usual process, which is whenever I come across problems, challenges, I try and do something simple, and for me, I just go and get a brew. So let's go got some cup of coffee, sat down at the table, and the second step on my process is to keep it simple. I like to say, give it a kiss, keep it super simple. So I got those 2 shopping bags and I laid it all out on the kitchen table, and you're talking 4 or 5 people would sit around this table. So, well, not massive, but big enough. And it covered the table. There was enough space for me to put my elbows on and have a brew in front of me. And the rest was covered by all this stuff that I got from the hospital. Because of my background with fitness, the moment the doctors told me what it was, the 2 and 2 went together. I knew exactly what the problem was, what was causing it. My body's not producing insulin. It can't process the carbohydrates. So I need to now manually do that, on my own, but I've got to learn how to do it. So I recognize the significance of the challenge, but I knew that I needed, if I was going to learn to do it properly, if I was going to learn to get back to what my life was used to, what I wanted my life to be like in terms of being fit and capable, being someone my kids could aspire to, because one of my 2 goals in life is to be remembered, and I want my kids to remember me for the right reasons, and the second is to help people, which is links back to the business. So they're my 2 main aspirations. But I realized that I needed something to keep me focused. I could see the challenge was going to be nuts. It was all laid out in front of me. It was the doctors made it very plain. It's challenging. It's type 1 diabetes is closely linked to anxiety and depression, because people struggle with it. So that was the moment where I kind of realized and went, well, hang on, bit of an epiphany moment here. The significance of the goal has to match the scale of the challenge. And this is going to be one hell of a challenge. So my recovery journey is going to have to get parked. If I'm going to stay in the Invictus Games in that process and stick with Team UK, it's got to be go big or staying at home. So that was the moment where I went, it was roughly about 6:30 in the morning on the 20th of May that I went, it's gold or nothing. That's it. I'm going for the top spot or I'm not going at all. And that's where my focus got really dialed in, if that makes sense. And it needed to be, because within the next week, I realized that the 4 finger pricks that I was doing, the hospital recommends all diabetics do when they start. You have to do them 1 before each meal and then 1 before bed. And then that helps you determine what insulin you need, including knowing how many carbs are in the food you're going to eat as well. You know what I mean? But I realized that wasn't going to be enough. So by the end of the first week, that number doubled. By the second week, it'd gone up again. Rolling the clock forward, be quick. The most recorded finger pricks I had was 43 in one day. Then there was the insulin injections, which is 5. Normally, you've got all the corrections as well, because basically every one of these finger pricks was telling me a mistake. And that's not even the dud tests as well, because I made the mistake so many times. When I got out the pool, for example, I'd forget to dry my hand properly. So I'd jab myself and the reader wouldn't work. So 43, you could quite easily been 60. But
it was 43 successful pricks.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was literally a walking human pincushion. So I should add that to my resume as well. But
yeah, you can put that right behind unluckiest man in NATO.
So that's what did it. Is in the nutshell. I say nutshell. It's not really. It's a long story, but that is what got me to where I am today. That's what changed my mindset, because that was the first, dare I say it, the first real significant time that I deliberately set my target on winning a gold medal. I'd never really tried to do that before, if I'm perfectly honest.
But what I love about that is it's like, okay, someone handed you a diagnosis, and that's one of the positives and the negatives of a diagnosis. For some, they live into that and they become that, and others they see it as a challenge. Oh, I can never do what again? Watch me do that, right? And what I'm hearing is over time, it was more of a, oh, yeah, no, I'm not dropping out. Please, I'm setting a bigger goal.
Mm-hmm.
Not only am I going to do it, I'm going to win it. So, which is seemingly uncharacteristic, because I am so curious. So, unluckiest man, kind of help me understand how that, I mean, you went through a lot.
Yeah, so the medical discharge was that was hard enough. That was arguably the most stressful period I've ever had in my life, and it was more the fact that I didn't know how I was going to provide for my family. That was the bottom line, because it wasn't about me. It was about looking after the people that I need to look after, and I didn't know how I was going to do it. But it wasn't the first challenge I'd had. Obviously, we've all had a few. I just seem to have a knack for if I'm going to get challenges, or at least there was a period of my life where if I was going to get challenges, they were going to come and they were going to keep coming. I don't believe that bad luck comes in threes, because it will just keep coming. And it was one of them periods, and we're not talking things like, I don't know, sleeping in or forgetting to pull my boots or have a shave, or those little things. It was things that were outside of my control, quite serious things that happened, from altercations with individuals at work. The most serious was we actually lost a son. So my first child was our son passed away right in the middle of a course I was doing at the time. That was quite intense, if that makes sense. But because it was they only run one of these a year, I couldn't drop out really either. Otherwise I was going to put my whole career on hold, which, so it kind of put a big challenge on what we were doing, if that makes sense. And there was a whole lot of other things as well, but that was the most significant one. And that was the point where I started getting known as the unluckiest man in NATO, because if there was something going to go wrong, it would usually find me. That was what I tend to find. And I don't think it was, at the time, I didn't really let it bother me too much, because I was doing it with a purpose, because the aim was to complete the course. The target was to get on this course. Basically, at the end of the course, you got a degree in engineering, and a bachelor's degree in telecoms engineering. Now, I'm not a student by any stretch of the imagination. So getting it with the military was probably the only way I was going to do it. I wouldn't go to university for 4 or 5 years like a lot of other people do. I just wouldn't have the patience for that. And I knew that this would benefit my career, because I got a title which was foreman of signals at the time, which basically is the lead engineering role you can get as a non-commissioned officer. And it was the next step in my career. It was that, or I changed careers altogether, which I didn't want to do. And I'd made a promise to the missus as well, that if I finished that I would try and get all my postings, all my placements tailored around what she wanted to do with her career. She'd followed me around enough at that point. So there was a couple of reasons why I wanted to get it done. It was the last step, but there just seemed to be, problem after problem during that course. And the course is nicknamed the divorce course for a reason, because you're doing an honours degree in engineering, which usually takes, what, 4 or 5 years, and you're doing it in 18 months. So, yeah, but that was the point where I got that reputation, shall we say. So, yeah, it was quite surreal, because it was actually my chain of command that said it the first time. And they said, look, we really feel for you, but we can't, it's not like we can back course you. And the course was changing, so the next one wasn't going to be the same anyway, because they were modernizing it, you see. So basically I could take a day or two to get help the other half and kind of get ourselves in a better state, and then basically get back at it, really. And that was it. So yeah, it's just basically a case of, as we said in the military, it was a case of just grizzing it out and just trying to be strong for the people that mattered, which at the time was my other half. So, yeah, that's what that came from. It's not a pleasant story, but
no, and and a lot of times the stories aren't pleasant, and yet you and your spouse found a way forward in some of the most seemingly insurmountable obstacles that any couple could face or any individual could face. And so I hear what you said in terms of just kind of toughing it and gritting it out, but there's a lot of people who wouldn't have. Where did you find the strength, and where did she find the strength, to the extent you can speak for the two of you, to keep going when so many others would have just said, you know what, this is a sign, I'm out?
So I would say, so I did the typical squatty thing of just grizzing it out. I did that a lot with my injuries as well, which was not a good thing, because ultimately it just compounded the problem, and that didn't help, when it came to the medical discharge as well. The same thing happened with that situation as well. Once it passed, that was it. It was in the past. You didn't bring it up again. You know what I mean? So again, that didn't help me either, because it was one of them situations where if I keep busy, focused on other things, I don't have to think about this, if that makes sense. And it was easy to do at the time because of the nature of the course I was doing. And then when I'm at home, I can just be there for my wife, simple as that. But I don't have to think about me or anything, that happened, let's just park it. That was kind of the idea. And I've done that with a number of different things. For example, earlier in my career, I'd been diagnosed with PTSD because of a situation that happened with a colleague who'd sadly, passed away in some unpleasant circumstances as well, and never really properly processed it at all. And it wasn't until after I actually got out of the military that I got the help needed to help process it, if that makes sense. So it's not like it's gone away. I look at it differently now, if that makes sense. And I look at all the issues differently, which is ultimately what led to me wanting to try and help people with developing their own personal resilience. And dare I say it, earning the reputation of just being a resilient person. I've since kind of learned other things now as well, like there's a new word that I came across a few weeks back, prosilience.
You mentioned that during our pre-meeting. So let's talk about what is, for those who don't know, what is prosilience?
So if you think of resilience as you're being able to adapt to a challenge or a problem, an issue, and absorb it into your life, if that makes sense. Prosilience is a step above again. It is, you don't just absorb it, you actually turn it into a success. You make yourself better as a result of the problem or the challenge or the issue. And I hadn't heard about it before. I think I'd only heard about it like a week or two before we first spoke. But I think that's a closer definition of what I've kind of, again, as embarrassing it is to kind of say, of what I've achieved in the last couple of years, and that gold medal, which is back there on the shelf behind me. That's a clear example of that. I can't. There's no shying away from it, really. From getting a life-threatening diagnosis and nearly being in a box, and then being in a position because of various injuries that had completely changed my life unexpectedly. It was a complete switch in focus, complete switch in lifestyle. And yeah, well, there you go. The evidence is behind me. So
Yeah, and let's talk about that because you set that as a goal. There's no way you're dropping out. And not only did you drop out, but let's talk about the fact that you stayed in while navigating all of that. You get the gold. So first of all, which of the sports did you actually end up in?
So I still did all four. I
You
still
did
did all
all
four of them.
four.
Still did all
Wow.
four. But
Okay.
I did take a real step back and look at them, and with the idea of like, which one can I really put the time into where I'm not dependent on other people, I'm not dependent on other things that can happen within it, within the event itself and such like. And that's where I settled properly on the time trial, the cycling time trial. So it's just me against the clock. It's for me to kind of get the all the bits ready and everything else as well. Yes, I can get some mechanical support. Yes, I can get some nutritional support. Yes, I can get first aid support, whatever, but once I'm going, it's me on the bike. There's nobody else. There's no one else around me. I'm not in a crowd like when I'm in a criterium race, so which it can go wrong very quickly. If someone goes down in front of you, there's nowhere to go. It tends to be like a domino effect when you're in a peloton. So that was the one I targeted over all the others. Still did them, enjoyed them, and got a lot out of them. But I wasn't really trying as hard with those, if that makes sense. Yeah, it was. Yes, there's not really. That's a simple answer, really. It was just me against the clock.
Yeah. So when you won, how did that feel?
Well, it is actually on YouTube because Prince Harry is actually the guy who put the medal around my neck. And the world's media was there because that was our first indicator that he was coming to our event. Because there was myself and obviously the silver and bronze medalists all stood together waiting, at the staging point, as it were. And we were being held there. They weren't going to bring us out yet because they said we've got the someone's coming. And then you see all the media rolling up and all the paparazzi and that, and it's like, hang on a second, they're not just coming here for anyone.
Yeah, no, that doesn't just happen for anyone.
No, not at all. So, as much as my mum tells me I'm special, I know I'm not that special, So, yeah, he turned up, and it was kind of surreal, really, because it's his birthday as well, the 15th September, which is my wife's birthday as well. I hadn't spoken to her all day, and I went out in my kilt as well because I was like, I'm the only one from Scotland. I'm gonna wear the colours, as it were. And I had my sporran on, which is a little pouch on the front, and I had my wife's birthday present in there because I hadn't said anything, and I'd had it for months, so, because I bought it ahead of time, and he put the medal around my neck, and it's hard to explain, but it's like a wave of pressure just disappears, if that makes sense, because at that point I put so much pressure on myself. Every little detail I'd been trying to work through, every single day, and every day another detail is being added and another one, and every day is the same, if that makes sense, and the pressure just built and built and built. If you look on YouTube and you look up Prince Harry cycling medal or something along those lines,
we're going to make sure to include that with your links, the links to all of your information that'll be included in the comments underneath wherever our audience is either viewing or listening to this. We'll make sure to include that YouTube link so that they can go and check that out for themselves.
No worries. Well, they'll get a nice little family sort of moment there because somehow someone had gotten word to him that my family were there, and he put the medal around my neck. Myself and the other medalists had a bit of a cuddle in front of the media. I'm blubbing away a little bit, as you do. And then he comes over and he says, right, where's your family? Prince Harry comes over and says, where's your family? Media can't hear anything. You just see me pointing, Next minute, my daughter, who was 4 at the time, comes running over. We have a great big cuddle in front of the media. I'm still blowing my eyes out. Then I go over to the barriers. Myself, my wife, and my daughter are all cuddling away. And you've got media on one side and then media on the other side as well. And the crazy part is we've got one side taking photographs and they get me and my daughter. And then you can see the media on the other side taking photographs as well. But then the next photograph is from the other side, and my wife hates that because she says you get a clear view HD image of her ugly crying face, as she calls it. Absolutely hates it. But it's really, as embarrassing as it was, it's to see it back. It was a really heartwarming moment. But my wife was really the only one who saw just how much pressure I was putting on myself, because most of my training, most of the time, I'm away from the team. I'm away from my extended family, my friends, all that kind of stuff. All the high blood sugars, the low blood sugars, the constant reminders of how many mistakes I'm making because of all these jabs I've been doing, because that's all they were, is just an indicator of another mistake that I've done, and then another mistake and another mistake, and it was all that takes its toll. So it was nice letting that pressure go, if that makes sense. And it was nice to be able to do it as a family. And yeah, it's all there to see on this video. It's about 3 minutes long.
We'll definitely make sure we post it. And believe it or not, we're at time, and there's actually so much more I would love to talk to you about, because we didn't even get into, okay, now you've experienced all this, and a huge part of what you do now is talking with and sharing your stories and your lived experiences about how you overcame all of these different adversities, some of which are, I mean, any one of them is huge, and you had all of them. And so, as we wind down, I know, based on our audience, that there are people watching this going, I can't do that. But there are times that you may have felt that way too. So, what advice would you offer to them, to those who are struggling right now, who don't think that they can find that prosilience or even the resilience, or even just to get up some days and put one foot in front of the other and keep going?
So a word I like to use, which I often think is used wrong, because of what the first thought that comes through people's minds, and that's investment. First thing that most people think of is money, finance, business. That's the first thing they think of, but it's not. There's actually four currencies. It's time, energy, focus, and money. So time is the number one. That's finite. You're not going to get that 5 minutes back, that 10 minutes back, that day back, and so on. So just spending 2 minutes doing something and doing it regularly, consistently, that 2 minutes adds up. It adds up quickly as well. You spend 30 minutes a day reading, and you're amazed at how much you'll learn by the end of a week, end of a fortnight, a month, and so on. Energy, applying your energy to certain things, prioritizing your day, and then trying to remain focused on certain things. So you give you 30 minutes, but you focus on one subject, and you keep doing that every 30 minutes. There's 30 minutes every day, and that'll build up, and if you roll the clock forward 6 months to a year, that 30 minutes every day times 365, that's a lot. And then the money bit, that's just an easy example. That just puts that resilience in the background, because if you invest money back into yourself in terms of training, in terms of personal development, in terms of if you save money on your energy bill, well, what stopped you then taking that saving and buying a battery? So you've got a backup battery. You can then charge that and use that when the power gets too expensive. Like over here in the UK, the bills have gone up because of the war in Iran. Little things like that. But it's the same with time. If you save time because maybe you managed to get all green lights on the way home, you've got 2 minutes. Well, invest that time into something else. Don't just sit on your ass and eat a Mars bar. That's not helping you. If that makes sense. But yeah, it's little things. Little things makes all the difference.
It absolutely does. And so thank you so much. I definitely would love to have you come back when you win your next gold medal. And more. But in the interim, for those who would like to reach out to you, as I mentioned, all your contact information will be in the comments. But while we're talking about it, especially for those who are audio learners, what's the best way to reach out to you if people would like to book you for speaking engagements wherever, or just learn more about you?
So my website's the easiest one, and that is speakingsbc.com. My social media handle is speakingsbc, or Scalyback Cyclist is one of them as well. On Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, But yeah, the website would be the easiest one. All the links are in there to the other things as well.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for the patience, the energy, the resilience, everything. Um, hey, even the challenges with doing this weren't, at least we're consistent.
Hey, if we didn't have the challenges, life wouldn't be as interesting, would it?
It wouldn't. So thank you so much for joining us today. And for all of you who are watching or listening to this podcast, wherever you're accessing it, thank you for joining us. You have so many viewing options these days and listening options. There's so much content out there, and we really value the fact that you choose to spend time with us. And if you've benefited from this conversation and other conversations that we've had with other amazing people as well, please share this information with others. Tell a friend so that they can benefit as well. And always remember, whether you're looking to make changes in your life, your career, your job, whatever, no matter how big or small, tune in again for more illuminating and fascinating and inspirational conversations with guests like David, who overcame multiple seemingly insurmountable odds to find his purpose and to live it.